Captain Olivia Hayes stood at the viewing window of the Earth diplomatic vessel Bridge Builder, her heart racing as the massive space station came into view. The structure was unlike anything humans had built, a spinning wheel of gleaming metal, nearly 20 miles across, with spokes extending from a brilliant central hub that glowed with unknown energy. Quite a sight, isn't it? Frank Russell moved to stand beside her. As chief diplomat, he'd spent the last 3 years preparing for this moment. "It makes our biggest stations look like children's toys," Olivia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She was responsible for 34 crew members on humanity's most important mission ever, making first contact with the Galactic Conclave, a union of over 300 alien species. Behind them, crew members worked quietly at their stations, but Olivia noticed how often they glanced up at the approaching wonder. The Bridge Builder wasn't a military vessel. It had been designed specifically for this mission, emphasizing openness and transparency in its very architecture. "Captain, we're receiving transmission from Conclave Control," said Communications Officer Paul Martinez. "They're sending approach vectors and docking instructions." "Put it on screen and send to navigation," Olivia ordered. The main screen filled with symbols that shifted and moved in patterns that hurt the eyes if watched too long. Luckily, the ship's computer translated them into standard flight paths. "They've assigned us to Docking Ring 7, Section 42, said the navigator. "That's apparently in the section reserved for non-member provisional attendees." Frank frowned. "Interesting. We're being classified with newly spacefaring species." "Isn't that what we are?" asked Amber Nichols, the ship's xenobiologist who had joined them on the bridge. Her eyes never left the station as she spoke. "We've only had contact with the Vrex and the Norva, and even those were just preliminary exchanges." "Yes, but the Conclave has been watching us for nearly a century," Frank reminded her. "They know exactly how advanced we are." Olivia tapped her finger on the railing. "And where they think we belong in their hierarchy." She turned to her crew. "Everyone remember your training. We're here as observers and ambassadors. Our job is to listen, learn, and represent Earth to the best of our abilities." Martinez looked up from his console. "Captain, we're being scanned. Multiple frequencies, some I've never seen before. Let them look," Olivia said calmly. "We have nothing to hide." The approach took another 40 minutes, during which the true scale of the station became clear. Ships of all shapes and sizes moved around it, some smaller than Earth shuttles, others so massive they dwarfed the largest human vessels ever built. The Bridge Builder glided toward its assigned dock under the guidance of Conclave Traffic Control. When they finally docked with a soft thud of connecting airlocks, Olivia gathered her diplomatic team in the ship's conference room. "Final checks. Everyone," she said, looking at each person in turn. The team consisted of Frank Russell, Amber Nichols, Dr. Alan Wright, their cultural anthropologist, Security Officer Samantha Bell, and 2 junior diplomats. They all wore the same formal blue uniforms with Earth's new symbol, a simplified globe with olive branches, on their shoulders. "Translators checked and functioning," Frank said, tapping the small device behind his ear. "They've been updated, with all language packets the Conclave sent ahead. Medical preparations complete," said Amber. "We've taken all recommended immunizations, and I have emergency kits if anyone reacts to something unexpected." Dr. Wright adjusted his glasses. "I've reviewed the welcome protocols they sent. The main thing to remember is that many species have different concepts of personal space. Some may stand very close, others may keep great distance. Try not to show discomfort either way." "Security assessment?" Olivia asked. Samantha Bell stood straighter. "We're allowed basic defensive tools only. I've equipped the team with personal shields that comply with Conclave regulations. The station security forces have an excellent reputation, but we should stay together in unfamiliar areas." "Very good." Olivia took a deep breath. "We represent not just our countries but our entire species. Let's make a good first impression." When they finally stepped through the airlock, they were met by 2 Conclave officials. One was clearly a Vrex, one of the 2 species humans had previously encountered. It stood over 7 feet tall with scaled skin and mottled green and yellow patterns. Its four eyes blinked independently as it observed them. The other being was completely new, floating about 3 feet off the ground, with a translucent body that pulsed with internal lights and no visible limbs or sensory organs that the humans could identify.
"Welcome to Conclave Station," the Vrek said in slightly accented English. "I am Senior Guide Zexka. This is Junior Administrator Ebb." It gestured to the floating creature. "Thank you for your welcome," Olivia responded with a small bow. "I
am Captain Olivia Hayes of Earth. These are my diplomatic and scientific advisors." After introductions were made, Zexka said, "The welcoming ceremony begins in 3 hours. We will show you to your quarters, so you may prepare." As they walked through the station's wide corridors, the humans tried not to stare at the incredible variety of beings they passed. Some walked on many legs, others floated or rolled. Some wore elaborate mechanical suits, while others moved in clouds of mist or liquid. Languages and sounds of all types filled the air, though many conversations fell silent as the humans passed by. "We're quite the attraction," Frank murmured to Olivia. "The newest curiosity," she agreed quietly. Their quarters were smaller than expected, but comfortable enough. After settling in, they dressed in their formal uniforms and followed their guides to an enormous chamber called the Grand Assembly Hall. The space was overwhelming. A vast amphitheater with thousands of different seating arrangements to accommodate the diverse physiologies of conclave members. The ceiling was a perfect replica of space, showing stars and nebulae in stunning detail. "The human delegation will be announced shortly," Zexka informed them. "You will proceed to the central platform when called, and High Chancellor Zex Taral will formally acknowledge your presence." "The High Chancellor is of your species?" Amber asked, noticing the similar name structure. "Yes. The Validarians, what you call Virex, currently hold the High Chancellorship." Pride was evident in Zexika's voice. "It is a great honor." As they waited, Dr. Wright whispered observations about various species to the team. The enormous chamber gradually filled, and the humans felt thousands of alien eyes examining them with everything from curiosity to indifference to what appeared to be disgust. Finally, a resonating tone silenced the assembly. A tall Validarian in elaborate robes approached a central platform that rose above the chamber floor. "High Chancellor Zex Taral," their guide announced quietly. A voice speaking all languages at once echoed through the hall, somehow comprehensible to everyone present. The Chancellor formally opened the session and then announced, "We recognize the presence of representatives from Earth, a developing world seeking observer status." That was their cue. Captain Hayes led her team forward, walking the long path, to the central platform with measured steps. The silence was absolute as they approached the imposing figure of the High Chancellor. Olivia stopped at precisely the designated spot and looked up at the Validarian leader. This close, she could see the intricate patterns on its scales and the wisdom in its ancient eyes. "High Chancellor," she said clearly, "on behalf of Earth and all humanity, we are honored to join this assembly of worlds." Then, without thinking twice about it, Captain Olivia Hayes did something that would change galactic history forever. She extended her hand. The moment Captain Olivia Hayes extended her hand toward High Chancellor Zex Taral, chaos erupted throughout the Grand Assembly Hall. The simple human gesture triggered an immediate wave of reactions across the gathered alien delegates. Several species activated personal shields with audible hums and flashes of light. Others retreated from their positions, creating a ripple of movement throughout the chamber. Translator devices across the hall buzzed and crackled as they attempted to interpret the gesture across hundreds of different cultural frameworks. "Threat display," shouted someone in the crowd. "Physical challenge," called another voice. "Mating proposal," gasped a third. Security Officer Samantha Bell moved closer to Captain Hayes, her hand drifting toward her concealed shield generator. The other human delegates froze in confusion, unsure what had gone wrong. Dr. Alan Wright stepped forward quickly. No, it's a greeting," he called out, his voice barely audible over the growing commotion. "A peaceful greeting only." Frank Russell touched his earpiece, hearing the translations of dozens of alarmed conversations. His face paled as he realized the magnitude of their mistake. High Chancellor Zex Taral remained perfectly still, 4 eyes fixed on Hayes's outstretched hand. The Validarian's scales shifted slightly in color, moving from deep green to a lighter, blue-green. The chamber gradually quieted as everyone waited for the Chancellor's response. "Captain," Frank whispered urgently, "I think you should withdraw your—" But before he could finish, the High Chancellor moved. With deliberate slowness, Zex Taral extended one of his upper limbs, the scaled appendage ending in 4 long fingers. The Chancellor's hand hovered just above Hayes for a moment, then lowered until they touched. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Never in recorded conclave history had the High Chancellor initiated physical contact with a new species during a formal introduction. Olivia maintained her composure despite her racing heart, gently closing her fingers around the alien hand in a proper handshake. The Chancellor's skin felt cool and surprisingly smooth. "In the name of understanding between our peoples," she said clearly. The translators broadcast her words across the hall in hundreds of languages. After a brief moment, the Chancellor released her hand and stepped back. "In the name of understanding," Zex Taral repeated, voice resonating throughout the chamber. Then, addressing the entire assembly, the Chancellor added, "The humans greet us with their customs, as is their right as guests. The session will proceed." The tension in the room didn't disappear, but it shifted to something closer to fascination. Delegates leaned toward each other, whispering and gesturing as the human delegation was directed to their designated observation area. As they took their seats, Frank leaned close to Olivia. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" he whispered, his voice a mixture of awe and concern. "I offered a handshake," she replied quietly. "It seemed appropriate. You just violated about 15 different cultural taboos," Dr. Wright explained, his face still pale. "Physical contact outside of formal rituals is forbidden in most conclave protocols. Some species consider any unsanctioned touching to be either a challenge or something much more intimate." Olivia felt her face grow hot. "Why wasn't this in our briefing materials?" "Because it was so obvious to them, they didn't think they needed to mention it," Amber Nichols suggested. "Like how we don't specifically tell visitors to Earth not to remove their clothes during formal introductions." The formal proceedings continued for another 2 hours. Various delegates presented reports on trade disputes, territorial claims, and scientific discoveries. The humans listened carefully, their translators working overtime to make sense of the complex discussions. When the session ended, their guide Zexka approached quickly, seeming agitated. "You will come with me," the Virek said firmly. "The High Chancellor wishes to speak with you privately." The human delegation exchanged worried glances but followed their guide through a series of corridors and security checkpoints. They were led to a much smaller chamber with elegant furnishings designed to accommodate various body types. They waited for only a few minutes before High Chancellor Zex Taral entered, accompanied by 2 other aliens, one with a body like a tall insect covered in iridescent blue exoskeleton, the other resembling something between a jellyfish and a cloud of gas. "Captain Hayes," the Chancellor began without preamble, "you have created quite a situation with your hand gesture." "I apologize for any offense," Olivia replied carefully. "It was not our intention to violate protocol." "Not offense," the insect-like being said, its voice clicking through the translator. "Confusion, intrigue. The simple touch carries meaning. We cannot decode. It is called a handshake," Frank Russell explained. "It's a traditional Earth greeting signifying peaceful intentions and respect. The cloud being pulsed with soft light as it spoke. Physical contact as greeting is unusual. Most species touch only for necessity, combat, or reproduction. Humans are social creatures," Dr. Wright offered. "Touch is important in our culture. It builds trust and connection." The Chancellor's scales rippled with color again. "Trust through vulnerability. Fascinating concept. May I ask why you accepted the handshake, Chancellor?" Olivia asked. "You could have refused." Zex Taral was silent for a moment before responding. The Validarians have studied your species longer than you know, Captain Hayes. Your social structures intrigue us. Most spacefaring races evolved from solitary predators or collective hive intelligences. Humans exist in the space between, individual but cooperative. We've observed your television broadcasts for decades, the insect being added. Your fiction especially reveals much about your psychology. Frank couldn't hide his surprise. You've been watching our entertainment? Indeed. Your movies show much about how humans think, the cloud being pulsed. Your species imagines countless ways to meet aliens, usually with fear, sometimes with hope, always with handshakes. Olivia smiled slightly. We've been rehearsing for this moment for a long time in our stories. The High Chancellor moved closer. The Conclave faces challenges, Captain Hayes. Old alliances fracture while threats grow. Your handshake has created an opportunity. Opportunity for what? Amber asked. New perspective, said the Chancellor. The human delegation will be granted observer status with special advisory privileges. You will attend all sessions, including some normally closed to non-members. Frank stepped forward. That's extremely generous, Chancellor, but why? Because you offered your hand without fear, Zexteril interrupted. In front of 300 species, knowing nothing of our customs or potential dangers, the cloud being pulsed brightly. Some call it reckless, others brave. All agree it was unpredictable. We value new perspectives, the insect being added, as the meeting continued. Samantha Bell remained watchful, noting the subtle security measures in the room and the careful positioning of the alien leaders. Something about this situation felt off to her trained eye. The aliens seemed too interested, too accommodating of the diplomatic blunder. When they finally returned to their quarters hours later, the human team was exhausted but excited by the unexpected opportunity. As security officer, Samantha called for their attention. I don't want to dampen the mood, she said carefully. But doesn't this seem strange to anyone else? We make a major protocol error, and instead of censure, we get special access. Dr. Wright nodded slowly. She's right. There's more happening here than we understand. Maybe they really are just intrigued by our differences, Amber suggested. Olivia looked thoughtful. Or maybe we've walked into something much bigger than a cultural exchange. She glanced at each team member. Whatever's happening, we need to be careful. Keep your eyes and ears open. Tomorrow we'll get our first real look at galactic politics. Outside their quarters, unseen by the humans, a small monitoring device recorded their conversation. In a secure chamber elsewhere on the station, High Chancellor Zexteril watched the feed with interest. The handshake that may save us all, the Chancellor murmured. If they're ready. The second day on Conclave Station began early for the human delegation. Captain Olivia Hayes stood before her team in their common area, reviewing the schedule that had been sent to their communication terminals overnight. We have 3 major sessions today, she explained. First, a resource allocation debate between the Validarian Assembly and the Mirarch Sovereignty. Then a technology exchange proposal hearing. Finally, a Security Council meeting about the Outer Rim territories. Frank Russell studied the details on his tablet. The Security Council meeting is usually closed to non-members. The Chancellor wasn't joking about special access. Which makes me even more suspicious, Samantha Bell added. No one gives away valuable information without expecting something in return. Dr. Alan Wright adjusted his glasses. We should focus on learning as much as possible about the power dynamics. Who defers to whom? Which species ally together? Who speaks and who remains silent? Agreed, Olivia nodded. Amber, I want you paying special attention to biological reactions. Can you tell when different species are stressed, angry, or lying? The xenobiologist smiled. I'll do my best, but with over 300 species, I'm still learning the basics. As they made their way to the first session, they noticed more aliens watching them openly, some even following at a distance. Word of the handshake had clearly spread throughout the station. The resource allocation debate took place in a smaller chamber than the Grand Assembly, with about 60 delegates present. The humans were directed to observation seats along one wall, where they could watch the proceedings without directly participating. The debate centered on mining rights in a star system called Helios 9, which contained rare mineral deposits. The Validarians claimed historical rights to the system, while the Merkt insisted it fell within their expansion territory. The Charter of Worlds clearly defines our ancestral claim, argued the Validarian representative, a tall figure similar to the High Chancellor but with darker scales. Helios 9 was mapped by our exploration vessels 10,000 years ago. Maps are not claims, countered the Merkt delegate, a being with 6 limbs and a hard exoskeleton that gleamed under the chamber lights. Your people abandoned the system for millennia. Our colonies need those resources now. As the debate grew heated, Frank leaned close to Olivia. Classic territorial dispute. Not so different from Earth history, except the timescales, she whispered back. They're arguing about who was there first 10,000 years ago. Makes our border disputes seem childish. For nearly 2 hours, the delegates argued back and forth. The human team watched carefully, noting which species supported each side and which remained neutral. The Validarians clearly held more political power, but the Merkt had numerous allies. When the debate reached a deadlock, a moderator called for a brief recess. During this break, several delegates approached the humans with curious questions about Earth. Most seemed genuinely interested in learning about human culture and politics. One delegate, a being that looked like a cross between an octopus and a spider, moved close to Amber. Is it true that humans will touch any species without fear? It asked through its translator. We respect boundaries, Amber explained carefully. The handshake is offered, not forced. Either party can decline. Fascinating, the creature replied, watching her with multiple eyes. Most species here evolved with strong territorial instincts or fear responses. The idea of voluntary contact across species lines is revolutionary. When the session resumed, the debate grew even more heated. It became clear that neither side would concede their position. We have reached impasse, the moderator announced. Unless new proposals are offered, this matter will be deferred to the next full assembly. Frank Russell glanced at Olivia with raised eyebrows. She nodded slightly, giving him permission to speak. If I may, Frank said, standing and activating his translator. The Earth delegation would like to offer an outside perspective. A murmur ran through the chamber. The moderator hesitated, then nodded. The human observer may speak. Frank stepped forward, his heart pounding but his voice steady. On Earth, we have a concept called international waters, where no single nation claims exclusive rights. Perhaps Helios 9 could be established as a neutral zone with joint development rights. Impossible, the Validarian delegate said immediately. Our claim is absolute. And how would resources be allocated? Asked the Merkt representative. Frank continued. A percentage system based on investment and need. All parties could submit development proposals to a neutral oversight committee. Everyone benefits, no one controls. The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered this idea. The concept of shared territory without a clear dominant power was clearly unfamiliar. An interesting proposal, the moderator finally said. It will be taken under advisement. After the session ended, they attended the technology exchange hearing. This meeting was more technical, focusing on standardizing communications protocols across different technological systems. Chief Engineer Chris Benson, who had remained aboard the bridge builder during the first day's ceremonies, joined them for this session. During a demonstration of adaptive interface systems, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the chamber. Red lights flashed as an announcement echoed in multiple languages. Environmental system failure in Section 12. All nearby personnel evacuate immediately. The aliens began filing out quickly but calmly. As the human delegation followed, Chris Benson frowned. Captain, that's near the main atmospheric processing hub, he said. If there's a serious failure, it could affect this entire section of the station. Olivia hesitated. Is there anything we could do to help? Possibly. Human environmental systems are less advanced but more redundant. I might recognize problems they'd overlook. Go with him, Olivia told Samantha. Keep in communication. The Rest of us will continue to the Security Council meeting. Chris and Samantha hurried down a side corridor following the emergency response teams, while the others continued to their next session. The Security Council chamber was smaller and more heavily guarded. Only about 20 delegates were present, representing the major powers of the conclave. High Chancellor Zex Taral acknowledged the humans with a slight nod as they entered. The meeting focused on disturbing reports from the outer territories of conclave space. Several minor species had reported attacks on their colonies, but evidence was lacking about who was responsible. The pattern suggests coordinated strikes, reported a military commander from a species that resembled tall, thin humanoids with reflective skin. Smaller colonies vanish without distress calls. Larger ones report seeing unidentified ships before communication is lost. The Merarchty borders these regions, said a Validarian security officer. Perhaps they seek to expand through conquest rather than diplomacy. The Merc delegate bristled visibly. We reject these baseless accusations. Our species has followed conclave law for 2,000 years. As tensions rose, Olivia noticed subtle signals passing between certain delegates. Something wasn't right. This felt like political theater rather than a genuine security discussion. Meanwhile, in the environmental control section, Chris Benson and Samantha found themselves working alongside alien engineers trying to stabilize a failing recycling system. A merked engineer named Kuzit seemed particularly impressed by Chris's practical approach to the problem. You bypass secondary confirmation protocols? Kizit asked, watching Chris reconnect emergency systems. In a crisis, yes, Chris explained, hands moving quickly through unfamiliar technology. Perfect solutions can wait, stopping the immediate. Failure comes first. Working together, they managed to stabilize the system. As the alien engineers expressed their gratitude, Samantha noticed Kazit studying Chris with what appeared to be respect. Your engineer thinks differently, Kazit told her. Not like Validarians who follow procedures always. You improvise. Back in the Security Council, Dr. Wright was carefully observing the delegates when he noticed something odd. The Validarian security officer had used a specific phrase, follow the light, that caused several delegates from different species to touch their communication devices in the same way. As the meeting concluded, he whispered his observation to Olivia. It could be nothing, he said, but it felt like a coded signal. Add it to our notes, she replied quietly. We're missing something important here. That evening, as the human delegation compared observations in their quarters, their communication panel chimed. A message appeared from High Chancellor Zex Taral. Your presence is requested at tomorrow's faction summit. Come prepared to discuss Earth's perspective on galactic governance. Frank stared at the message in shock. The faction summit? That's where the real power brokers make decisions. It seems our handshake opened more doors than we expected, Olivia said thoughtfully. The question is whether we're being invited as potential allies or being set up to take a fall. The morning of the faction summit brought a tense atmosphere to the human quarters. Captain Olivia Hayes watched her team prepare, each person checking their translator devices and reviewing notes from previous sessions. Remember, Olivia said as they gathered by the door, we're observers first. Answer questions honestly, but don't volunteer Earth's weaknesses. We still don't know who our allies are here. Frank Russell nodded. The three major factions will all be watching us carefully. The Validarian Assembly seems friendly now, but that could change quickly. I did more research on the factions overnight, Dr. Wright said. The Validarians control most major trade routes. The Merc sovereignty holds the largest territory but less technological advancement, and the Hive Collective has the strongest military but smallest population. Classic power balance, Samantha noted. Each needs the others, but all want to be dominant. Their guide arrived to escort them to the summit. This time it wasn't Zexica, but a member of the Hive Collective, a being resembling a tall, slender humanoid with translucent skin through which complex patterns of light pulsed constantly. I am Nexus 7, the being introduced itself. I will escort you to the summit chamber. As they walked through corridors they hadn't seen before, Chris Benson moved closer to Olivia. "Captain, I've been thinking about that environmental system failure yesterday. It wasn't an accident." "You're sure?" she asked quietly. "Positive. Someone deliberately overrode safety protocols. My merked colleague Kizit confirmed it wasn't the first accident recently." This troubling information had no time to sink in before they arrived at the summit chamber, a perfectly spherical room with a large circular table in the center. Around it sat 9 delegates, 3 from each major faction. High Chancellor Zexaterrel sat at what appeared to be the head position, though in a circular table this seemed largely symbolic. "The human delegation is welcome to the faction summit," the Chancellor announced. "Please be seated." Special chairs had been prepared for the humans at a smaller side table. As they took their places, Olivia could feel the intense focus of every alien present. "Before we address scheduled matters," Zexaterrel continued, "the human representatives have been invited to share their perspective on a pressing issue. Recent reports indicate increased activity in the border regions between our territories. Ships and even small colonies have disappeared without explanation." A representative from the Hive Collective spoke next, light patterns flashing rapidly across its body. "Our reconnaissance indicates organized military action, yet no faction claims responsibility." "Because none are responsible," declared a Murkite delegate, striking the table with one of its limbs. "These accusations are a pretext for increased Validarian presence in neutral space." The argument escalated quickly, with representatives talking over each other. Frank leaned toward Olivia. "They've been having this same fight for years, according to the archives. Nobody wants to appear weak by admitting they can't protect their own territory." Olivia nodded and stood up. The room gradually fell silent, as the aliens noticed her. "If I may," she said, her voice steady. "On Earth, when ships disappear mysteriously, we consider all possibilities, including those we don't want to face." "Explain," the Chancellor requested. "It could be natural phenomena, equipment failure, or hostile action by known powers," Olivia continued. "But it could also be a new threat, one unknown to any faction." The delegates exchanged glances. AI, Validarian security officials scoffed. "The Conclave has cataloged all spacefaring species in this sector. There are no unknown powers." "With respect," Dr. Wright joined in, "history teaches us that assumptions of complete knowledge are often proven wrong." Before the discussion could continue, the chamber doors burst open. A junior Validarian officer rushed in, clearly agitated. "High Chancellor, urgent news from monitoring station Delta 6. They've detected an unidentified fleet entering Conclave. Space." Screens activated around the chamber, showing tactical displays of multiple vessels moving in formation. The aliens began speaking rapidly in their native languages, overwhelming the translation systems. High Chancellor Zexaterrel raised all 4 arms for silence. "How many ships?" "At least 40, possibly more," the officer reported. "Configuration unknown. They're not responding to hails." "Defensive positions," ordered the Chancellor. "Alert all nearby Conclave vessels." Amid the commotion, Samantha Bell had moved to a better viewpoint of the tactical displays. "Captain," she called to Olivia, "those formations look similar to old Earth naval tactics. They're setting up a blockade." Before Olivia could respond, another alarm sounded throughout the station. The lights flickered once, then dimmed to emergency levels. "Station systems are being accessed externally," announced a station security officer. "Multiple breaches detected in our network." Chris Benson looked alarmed. "Someone's hacking the station. That should be impossible with their security protocols." "Unless they had inside help," Samantha suggested grimly. The emergency became even more serious when the station's artificial gravity fluctuated, causing everyone to momentarily float before being slammed back down. "Life support systems compromised," reported another officer. "Backup systems engaged, but they're being targeted too." High Chancellor Zexaterrel turned to Olivia. "Captain Hayes, please return to your vessel with your crew. It may be safer there." "We can help," Olivia offered. "Our engineer could assist with backup systems." "No," the Chancellor said firmly. This attack may be related to your presence. The handshake was seen by all. Perhaps it was seen as weakness by our enemies. As station, security escorted them back toward the docking bay. The humans found themselves in increasingly chaotic corridors. Aliens of all species were rushing to emergency stations or back to their own ships. Halfway to the bridge builder, they were forced to detour when a security bulkhead sealed unexpectedly. Their escort led them through a less-traveled service corridor. "Something's not right," Samantha whispered to Olivia. "Why route us away from the main corridors?" They got their answer when they rounded a corner and found 5 armed figures waiting. They weren't station security. These beings wore unmarked black armor that concealed their species. "Humans," one of them said in a mechanically filtered voice. "You will come with us." Their escort suddenly drew a weapon. "Move now," he ordered the humans, but it wasn't clear if he was telling them to obey the armed figures or run. Samantha acted instantly, activating her personal shield and pushing, Olivia behind her. "Hostile intent," she shouted, drawing her own small defensive weapon. What happened next unfolded in seconds. The black armored figures fired energy weapons that splashed against Samantha's shield. Their escort fired at the attackers, hitting one before being shot himself. The humans scattered for cover as energy blasts scorched the walls around them. "Run," Olivia ordered her team. "Back to the main corridor." As they retreated, one of the attackers called out, "The purifiers will cleanse this contamination. No more handshakes with lesser beings." Just as the humans reached the junction to the main corridor, another group appeared behind their attackers. Leading them was High Chancellor Zexaterral himself, along with several Validarian security officers. The firefight was brief, but intense. When it ended, 3 of the black-armored attackers were down while 2 had escaped. "Are you unharmed?" the Chancellor asked, approaching quickly. "Yes," Olivia confirmed, though Samantha's shield had been damaged and their escort was seriously injured. "Who were they?" "A faction we believed eliminated centuries ago," Zexaterral said grimly. "Extremists called the Purifiers. They believe in genetic purity of advanced species. Contact with lesser races is considered contamination." "And the fleet?" Frank asked. "A diversion, it seems. Their real target was you." The Chancellor's scales darkened. "Captain Hayes, I must tell you something important. During your handshake, I placed a microscopic tracer on your skin, standard procedure for all new species. That is how we found you so quickly." Olivia felt a chill at this revelation. "You've been tracking us?" "For your protection," Zexaterral insisted. And now it seems that precaution was justified. Back in the relative safety of their quarters, the human delegation processed everything that had happened. Medical staff had treated their minor injuries, and station security had been doubled around their section. "A tracer," Samantha said, pacing the room. "We should have expected something like this. No species would trust newcomers completely." Captain Olivia Hayes sat quietly considering their options. "The question is whether the Chancellor placed it for our protection or to monitor us as potential threats." "Maybe both," Frank suggested. "But right now we have bigger problems. These purifiers targeted us specifically. They called the handshake a contamination." Dr. Wright pulled up information on his tablet. "I've been searching the archives we were given access to. The purifiers aren't mentioned much, but there are references to a species purification movement from about 3 centuries ago. They believed that interspecies cooperation diluted evolutionary progress. Basically, space racists," Amber Nichols said flatly. "What I don't understand," Chris Benson added, "is why they'd care so much about humans. We're new here, barely on the galactic radar." Olivia stood up and faced her team. "It's not about us specifically. It's about what the handshake represents. Think about it. Most species here evolved as predators or hive minds. They value strength or collective identity. Then humans arrive and suggest cooperation between equals through a simple touch. We're challenging their entire worldview," Frank realized. Their discussion was interrupted when the communication panel chimed. High Chancellor Zexaterral requested their presence at an emergency Grand Assembly session in 1 hour. "All species are convening," the message stated. The purifier threat must be addressed openly. When they arrived at the Grand Assembly Hall, they found it filled to capacity. Representatives from all 300 member species were present, creating a dizzying array of life forms. The tension in the room was palpable. High Chancellor Zexaterral called the session to order. Honored delegates, we face a crisis not seen in generations. The purifiers, whom we believed eliminated, have returned. They have infiltrated our governments, our security forces, and even this station. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as images appeared on large screens showing the attack on the human delegation and the mysterious fleet that had approached the station before retreating. For those unfamiliar with our history, the Chancellor continued, the purifiers believe in species isolation. They oppose the very foundation of the conclave, that diverse species can coexist and cooperate. Their ultimate goal is to eliminate what they consider lesser species from the galaxy. A Merc delegate rose. How do we know these aren't Validarian agents posing as purifiers? This could be an attempt to increase security powers throughout conclave space. More accusations followed, with delegates from different factions pointing fingers at each other. The unity of the conclave seemed to be crumbling before their eyes. Olivia leaned toward Frank. This is falling apart. All the old rivalries and suspicions are coming out. And the purifiers know it, he replied. Divide and conquer, an ancient Earth strategy. Suddenly, Dr. Wright grabbed Olivia's arm. Captain, I've been thinking about those missing colonies. What if they weren't destroyed? What if the purifiers have been abducting entire populations? For what purpose? Experimentation, study, or worse, to determine which species should be allowed to exist. As the arguments in the chamber grew more heated, Captain Hayes made a decision. She stepped forward and approached the center of the hall. High Chancellor, may I address the assembly? Zexaterral seemed surprised but nodded approval. The human representative may speak. Olivia stood in the center of the vast chamber, feeling thousands of alien eyes upon her. She took a deep breath. Members of the conclave, I am Captain Olivia Hayes of Earth. Our world is new to galactic society. We have much to learn from all of you, but perhaps, in our newness, we offer a fresh perspective. She looked around the chamber slowly. I've listened to your debates. I've observed your interactions, and I see what the purifiers see. Divisions, suspicions, alliances based on convenience rather than trust. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward with interest. On Earth we have a saying, united we stand, divided we fall. The purifiers aren't attacking random targets, they're attacking the very idea of cooperation between different species, and by turning against each other, you're helping them. Delegate shouted, why should we trust each other when betrayal is common? Because the alternative is worse, Olivia replied. Trust must start somewhere. She extended her hand, palm up, in the center of the chamber. On Earth, this gesture, the handshake, began as a way for potential adversaries to show they carried no weapons. It evolved into a symbol of agreement, of mutual respect. High Chancellor Zexaterral rose from his seat and approached her. What are you proposing, Captain Hayes? A new alliance, not based on power or fear, but on mutual trust. The purifiers want isolation. Let's show them integration. The Chancellor studied her for a long moment. Then, to the shock of the assembly, he extended his hand and clasped hers firmly. Trust begins with action, he announced. From the crowd, Kuzit the Merc engineer stepped forward. The humans helped save our section when systems failed. They acted without benefit to themselves. The Merc approached and placed one of its limbs atop the joined hands of Olivia and the Chancellor. One by one, representatives from other species approached. Some moved cautiously, others with greater confidence. A member of the Hive Collective, a delegate from a gaseous species who had to use a mechanical appendage, a small furry being who had to stand on a hovering platform to reach. Each added their touch to the growing circle. This is what the purifiers fear, Olivia said as the circle expanded. Not weapons or technology, but unity despite differences. Not all delegates joined. Many watched skeptically from their positions. but enough came forward that a clear message was sent. As images of this unprecedented gathering of species spread throughout the station and beyond, Olivia noticed something remarkable. The translators had fallen silent, yet somehow, in the simple act of touch, communication was happening. In a secure chamber elsewhere on the station, captured purifier agents watched the broadcast with horror. Their leader, a being of unidentified species, turned away in disgust. "The contamination spreads," it hissed. 3 days later, as the human delegation prepared to return to Earth with new treaties and alliance proposals, High Chancellor Zextaral met privately with Captain Hayes. "The handshake has changed everything," he said. "Several missing colonies have been found. The purifiers are retreating from known space." "They'll be back," Olivia said. "Ideas like theirs never die completely." "True, but neither do ideas like yours." The Chancellor's scales rippled with colors that the translator identified as respect. "We would like to establish a permanent human embassy on the station, and we propose a joint mission, your ship and crews from other species working together to track the remaining purifiers." "The bridge builder becoming an actual bridge between worlds?" Olivia smiled. "I like that." As they finalized the details, news arrived that 12 more species had requested to join what was now being called the Circle of Trust, the new coalition formed at the Grand Assembly. When the bridge builder finally departed, Conclave Station, it carried not just the human crew but representatives from 5 other species. Their mission, to seek out isolated worlds and offer them a hand in friendship. In her personal log that night, Captain Olivia Hayes recorded, "Who would have thought that humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization would be a simple handshake? Sometimes the most powerful ideas are the simplest ones, that different beings can stand together hand in hand, stronger than they ever could alone." Light years away, on a small planet just making its first ventures into space, an alien telescope detected an approaching vessel. As the strange ship entered orbit, the planet's leaders gathered nervously to receive their first visitors from the stars. When the airlock opened, Captain Hayes stepped forward with a smile and an extended hand. The handshake that had stunned the galaxy was about to change it forever.